Hello, so my name is Otto. This is my first video and my first Art Snacks box. Seemed like a perfect combination, really. Yeah, so this sticker will go in my sticker book. Art Snacks is getting their own page now. Um, as if that's exciting. Full disclosure, I had opened this box before I even started the video. I got a little bit overly excited and I wanted to actually see what was inside it, see if I could come up with any ideas for what I was going to draw with it before I even sat down to, kind of deal with some anxiety ahead of time. Um, so I got the Faber Castel watercolor markers in pink carmine and warm gray 3, which I've been looking at these watercolor markers for ages, so that was great. And then this zig in island coral. Um, Not my favorite color, but and then this ArtGraf water-soluble graphite pencil in 2B, and a Princeton Glacier uh, size 2 round, which is a fairly small brush for anything a size that I would usually do. Anyway, um, so I started off by trying to get used to the pencil, kind of see how it feels. I'm slightly heavy-handed naturally, um, just because I have a lot of issues with my hands, which I'll talk about in other videos at some point probably. So the best way for me to get used to any sort of new tool is to just use it. So with a pencil, that means drawing or writing. Um, so I started drawing, something I'm used to, which is like my little ghost dudes that you'll see a lot of if you decide to follow um, or catch any other videos of mine, probably. Swatching everything out, start with the pink carmine, which is a nice, rich color. Um, it looks very magenta in video, but it's kind of like a deep, dark magenta, not quite a red. It's close to the color that, okay, this is gonna be like trivia, but close to the color that blood, fake blood would be in old movies um, when they weren't allowed to have realistic blood um, due to the TV rules and everything like that. It was always orange or magenta and that kind of thing. And it's kind of right on the edge of that. Like I said, the island coral, that color kind of threw me off a little bit. I can see how these would all work together for most people fairly easily. For me, uh, it was definitely a bit of a challenge figuring out how I was going to fit everything together. Of course, all of them being water soluble, that means the next thing is figuring out how they work with water. Um, as I mentioned, the Faber Castel, uh, those are ones that I looked at many, many times. I'm a big fan of Faber Castel products. I use a lot of them already. So this was something that I'd been looking at these tools for quite a while. I just never gotten a chance to use them because they are a bit expensive. I have no money, currently unemployed for medical reasons. So um, then the Zig, like I said, the Zig kind of threw me off in a lot of ways. I had to mess with it, figure out the right way to use it, um, because it didn't work like a watercolor marker, because technically it's not a watercolor marker. It's just a water soluble, it's water based. Um, Now, that graphite worked amazingly. Made some really nice, deep charcoal grays and everything if you worked with it heavy. Um, of course, I had to test how it erased so that, I knew whether or not I could actually make mistakes because, like I said, fairly heavy handed. Um, so it's a little bit difficult. Now, that foam heart is there because I got them thinking, maybe I'll do some sort of Valentine, type thing and use those for it. Um, So I swatched everything on the foam heart to see how well they worked on it. And the answer is they didn't work terribly well. Um, it just, the foam just kind of sucked all of the water in too quickly, so made it very difficult to work with. Um, so I kind of, I tried, but I eventually I ended up nixing that idea. Um, so I started doodling. I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. I had talked to my best friend and my sister, kind of in my excitement about getting my Art Snacks box and seeing the colors that I had and everything, and the tools that I had, trying to figure things out. Um, and we'd had a few kind of ideas tossed back and forth. But for me, one of the easiest things for me to kind of sketch when I'm not sure what's going on, where I'm going with something, is insects. Um, I like bugs. Again, something just to be noted. Um, when I'm having art block, I've found that insects and plants are two of the things that I can most easily just doodle. Um, Sit down and do a sketch, a rough sketch, or even a detailed sketch. Um, Now, doing this, all I really wanted to do after I started started doing this was get like a lighter, kind of a paler, bright pink, and then like a yellow, and just do a rosy maple moth. That's that's all I wanted. And instead, I had pink carmine and island coral to work with. So that didn't happen. Um, I messed with it a lot, and as you can see, the that island coral just does not move. It just doesn't want to move. Once it's on the paper, it doesn't like to do much more than kind of smudge around a little bit. Um, so it wasn't going to work that way. There are other ways of doing it um, that I try a little bit after this. Um, so then I started moving into here. I start sketching some other ideas. So the idea that I'm sketching right now is one that my best friend came up with, um, and it's in my typical kind of cartoon style that I do, um, that you'll see later on in the video. Um, there are a lot of the little ghosty guys and stuff like that, and she had the idea of a monster or a ghost. In my a lot of my doodles, the ghosts are kind of hiding in the background. They're helping the humans out, or they're doing little things to play tricks on them. Um, so her idea was to have like one of the little ghosties hiding around a corner and having, you know, written something in ectoplasm or whatever on the wall, um, and the human finding it, and the ghost kind of, being like, "Ooh, uh, be my Valentine." So I liked that idea. I liked that idea a lot, but I wasn't really sure how to work it. Um, and I don't know what it was about the coral that just, I kept finding myself getting stumped by it. It kept throwing me off. Um, so then I moved on to poking at other things, other ideas, just having like a monster coming out of the shadows in a heart. Um, Again, trying to figure out how well I could, uh, if there was any possibility of still doing like the foam hearts. I started doing the whole thing of you get the ink into um, your palette, and then you just use water and the ink that you've got in the palette as kind of watercolor, and that made the island coral work a lot better. So, still not entirely sure where I was going with it because I didn't know how I was going to use that color, and I wanted to be sure that I used all of the items in the box in my final piece. I just started drawing. One of the things that I a lot of times will do when I start getting frustrated is I just remind myself that you're allowed to make a mess. Um, so I just kind of started making a mess. Am I happy with it? No. I knew going in that I probably wasn't going to be super happy with whatever came out of it. The proportions were all sorts of wonky, and I just kind of was winging it to a degree that was kind of ridiculous. But it was a good way for me to kind of get that out of my system, get to know what I was working with, how well it worked. Um, as you can see, that coral didn't even really make it in at all. It got covered up pretty much as soon as it did go in. Um, but my style tends to be very messy and sketchy, even when it's neat. Um, so it was getting myself used to that and how to work the tools into it. So there was that piece, and then I went back to that very first sketch, the one that my best friend had given me the idea for. I decided to go back to that and actually do something with it. So off camera, I just kind of started sketching and figuring out a better idea for how I wanted to fit it into the page. And I decided to go with the kind of heart-shaped uh, frame that I had used in that previous mess doodle, um, and to kind of have like it be kind of a window into their world. So not a window that the characters are aware of being there, but it just seemed like a cute little way to make it feel more Valentine's-y, um, which I'm not even sure why that it's a gimmick. That's it. That's the whole reason this is Valentine's video is just it's a gimmick. Um, because I hate Valentine's Day. It is pointless and boring to me. But uh, that's a very typical response I feel these days from most people. Um, so yeah, back to the art. Uh, I really like the way that the warm gray and the graphite kind of layer over each other to make this darker, uh, slightly warm charcoal color. And then if I used, the water to smooth that out a little bit, then it gave me kind of a nice light ink, uh, a pale gray to use um, to kind of do outlines, which I utilized a lot with kind of just using lines made with whatever was on my brush. Um, I still wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do with the background of it, or, how I was going to kind of translate my style into this, because I'm just getting used to using watercolor type products again. So, and I've been looking for years, I've been thinking, all right, I need to do this. Um, but finally doing it. Um, yeah, so not a whole lot of color going on, obviously, so far. Everything, it's very easy for me to do grayscale. The artwork that I originally did, that this style, my current style, is based on an old style that I drew in way back in college, um, which has been probably the original style. Oh Lord, I feel so old. Probably 15 years ago now, in the beginning of college, and yeah, so this is kind of an updated version of that. But the original version of this style I did with what colors were available at the time, and the colors that were readily available, I had black and red pens, and that's pretty much all I used was just black and red. So getting used to using other colors in it is very easy for me to imagine everything in, just monochrome, grayscale. It's figuring out exactly where I'm going to put color. and I knew where I was going to put that pink carmine. The island coral, on the other hand, it was a little bit harder, so I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe instead of using that pink carmine, I'll go with it being ectoplasm instead of blood or anything like that. Like I was kind of originally thinking, I would do blood and I'll make it ectoplasm and I can have like a base of the coral. And then I realized, well, I could do my hair, because yes, that is my little me type character. So like I could do the hair and the flashlight beam, kind of do what would typically be kind of yellow, um, if done in color, and use the coral for that instead, and just make everything. I just kind of change the tint of things. So then you end up with kind of the weird, again, like the old school horror blood, that sort of magenta-y red, and then that the little ghost has been painting on the wall with, and and then I took that and kind of balanced it out by using it to shade with the coral of the hair, and went in and did kind of a pink shirt because it seemed really boring to just have a white shirt, uh, especially if I was actually putting color into things. It's still a very, it's still primarily grayscale. Everything's kind of set up for it to be primarily grayscale. Um, and I mean, I had to use that graphite. And I love doing this. I love pulling the graphite off with the wet brush and kind of using it again to kind of line things, put the little dark bags underneath the eyes because that's very important. Um, Never getting enough sleep. Um, Throw a little bit of gray into things, kind of grunge things up a little bit. Um, it's probably something that I will do a lot from now on after messing around with this. Um, Again, have to grunge things up, so pull in that warm gray, use it to kind of make things a little bit messier, and put some shadow in, and yeah, uh, we've hit the point where I'm not even entirely sure what to say. Um, this did this didn't feel quite finished enough for me, so I finished it up like this with just the things from in the box, and then I ended up going back, cheating a little bit, going back with a fine liner and putting in some line details and that kind of thing. I try doing it in just like in a few seconds. I try doing it with the graphite, um, and it works to a degree, but because it is uh, a very soft graphite, it makes it a lot more difficult to get like a sharp point and the details and stuff like that, and everything. So I ended up giving up, and I pulled out a liner later on off camera because there's just something about this style that I have not yet figured out how to do it lineless. So, oh, and completely gloss over the fact that I now have gloves on. They're my compression gloves. I suffer from arthritis, so my hands were really, they've been acting up a lot lately. They started acting up, so I wanted to get this piece done, so I just threw the gloves on and continued working. Um, but yeah, so this is the Valentine's piece. This is that February art snacks, the first art snacks that I've received, and honestly, once I did this piece, I loved it. I'm still not entirely sold on that zig with that island coral, but it worked, and that's really, I made it work, and I will figure out other ways to make it work. But so yeah, if you enjoyed this, you want to hang out. This isn't going to be an entirely art channel, but there will be a lot of art. So, when I'm talking about things that make you uncomfortable, if you don't want to actually listen to me babbling about disability or queer issues, you can just mute me and watch me draw with put on your favorite music in the background. But if you liked this, subscribe, hang out, and I'll see you next time, probably with a proper introduction video.